I say don't worry about picking the right giant first off. Choose someone whose life calls to you, calls to something in you. You may not agree with everything they believed, right? I didn't line up theologically all the way with John O'Donohue by any means. But if they can help you see God more clearly, then they're worth walking with, right? We're given discernment.
Mhm.
We're given
Yeah.
opportunities to pray and seek God. And so this isn't a class, it's really a pilgrimage. Well, welcome to the Journey with the Giant podcast, friends. I am Robert Prince, and I am so glad you've joined us for this powerful series inspired by the upcoming book, Journey with the Giant, by author and spiritual director Lori G. Melton. If you're just joining us, this podcast explores the unique and life-giving spiritual practice of walking with the giant of the faith. Whether you've been longing to deepen your walk with God or you're simply curious about what it means to journey with the spiritual giant, you are in the right place. Welcome.
hmm Yeah, and here we are at our next episode. And this week, we're going to turn the mics around and you're going to get to hear from my dear friend and the co-host of this podcast, Robert Prince, about his experiences walking with spiritual giants and what God has done in his life. This is kind of fun because usually Robert will be the one hosting, but now we get to hear from him because he's had a really rich experience walking with giants. Robert is a spiritual formation coach, and he's also a writer who walks closely with others on their journey into a deeper life with God. And he and his wife, Rebecca, live in Texas, where they continue to explore creativity, calling, and the beauty of living fully immersed in the presence of God. So, hey, Robert, welcome. How are you today?
I am doing well. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's so great to be here and to be on the on other side of the mic, kind of, you know.
hmm
So,
yeah.
and not literally, but yeah, to flip our roles a little bit. So I'm excited to share my story and what Journey with the Giant has meant to me over the last couple of years.
Yeah. And as I thought about the podcast this morning, we're prepping for different episodes, and I had a special joy in prepping for this episode because I've gotten to walk so closely and watch firsthand how God has been forming you and what he's been doing in your life these last couple years. So it's a special joy for me to get to just provide a place for you to share what God's done. But before we get into your
Thank you.
story of the giants, I'd love for you to just share with our listeners a little bit more of who you are and what you do, and something you especially love about where God has you in your life right now.
Yeah. Wow. So big question. And I'll try to keep the answer semi-short.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I've just stepped into a new season after about 10 years as an associate pastor and stepped into the season that's been a little strange, but a little restorative and restful while also just allowing space. You and I talk
Mm.
personally about spaciousness, and living in that space where we just have room
Mhm,
to move with God. And that's kind of the season I'm in.
mhm.
And it's been a sweet, sweet season of just immersion in Christ. That's my word of the year this year is immersion.
Oh,
And after years of just carrying responsibility and juggling roles and really just sometimes losing sight of my own soul in the process, if I'm honest with you. And we'll talk more
yeah.
about that, I'm sure. I've just entered the season where I'm learning to live slower and just more rooted and just even more present. And
Louis?
much of that, I think, has come from the last few years. And some of that, of course, is from Journey with the Giant. And we'll get more into that, I know. But
Mhm,
there's just a
mhm.
freedom I feel now it's not about control, it's not about planning. It's just really about trust. And this has been a true season of trust.
Ah,
And so it's really deepened my relationship with God in ways that are just more honest, more alive, more energetic, even, and even
mm,
more sustainable. I was not living a real sustainable life when I was
mhm,
in my
mhm,
pastoral roles. And
mhm,
so, the place I'm at now, it's not flashy, it's not loud, but it just
mhm.
kind of feels like a holy moment season.
Yeah. So you're
Um,
doing some writing and you're also
yeah.
working on launching a ministry, right?
Yeah. So over the last few years, the Lord has just brought some dreams back to life that I thought were long dead. And one of those is a men's ministry that he called me to many years ago. And so I'm stepping into really working with men on several different levels. But one of those is going to be coaching them to just walk in purity and integrity in their walk with the Lord, but also just to lead their families well and their friends and their colleagues and be
Mm,
the be the person that God's called them to be, to really step out of apathy and into a life of purpose. So,
Wonderful. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And
excited about that.
yeah, it's really powerful. And so, Robert, here's a fun question for you. If we bumped into you on a slow Saturday morning, what might you be doing?
Well, for me, this would probably be a slow any morning now in this season, which I love. But I love spending time on my front porch, watching the sunrise and drinking my cup of coffee. I generally will have my iPad in hand, reading the Bible and or my journal, just writing a little
Oh,
bit. And so,
that's amazing.
yeah,
Yeah, you've been on a sabbatical type of a time from my perspective, and it's been
yeah,
great to watch you just take this transition season slow in between your 10 years of pastoral ministry and now into
yeah,
what God has for you next. So, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's a wonderful example.
Yeah, and it's really kind of crazy because my days are more full than they've ever been, or maybe
Mhm,
not ever, but in a long time. Even when I was a pastor, a lot more full with a lot of different things.
mhm.
But they're just more energizing. I'm more passionate about them. And so I was talking to my spiritual director a few weeks ago, and I was telling her kind of some things that were happening. She's like, "It sounds kind of like you're in a sabbatical season." And I'm like,
Mhm.
actually, you know, I had never put that word to it, but you're right. This
Mm,
feels
mhm.
very sabbatical like. And so,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's a good
full
word
and
for it.
yet it's a sabbatical. Yeah.
Yeah.
So neat, neat. I'm learning from you,
Yeah.
taking notes. So, anyway, well, let's talk about your giant journey and let's go back and just explore where your journey with giants began and how you first came to this practice.
Yeah. So, well, it was actually when I met you at a writers conference. Actually, we didn't meet at the writers conference. We were at a
No.
conference for 3 days with about 300 other people, but we never actually met until we got to the airport to leave. And
Yes.
so we were both on the same flight back to Dallas, which in itself is weird because I was coming back to the Dallas area and you were going home to
Mm.
Michigan. Right.
Right.
And so to come to Dallas to go to Michigan, it was just kind of one of those things that I think it was a divine appointment, honestly.
Hmm.
And the time we spent at the airport waiting to catch our flight, wondering if it was going to be canceled, we were just able to
Yes.
connect over while you were at the conference. And you had actually pitched this book, I think, at the conference. And yeah, just was really intrigued by it. And then just a couple of weeks later, you invited me into Journey with the Giant, kind of a beta group that you were doing in 2023. And so
Hmm.
that's kind of how I came to know of it. And after I thought about it, didn't take me long to realize, yeah, this is something I wanted to try. And so I think in December is when I actually committed
Yeah.
to doing that. I had a lot of questions. I wasn't sure who I
Mhm.
wanted to pick and journey with, but honestly, you referred to pilgrimage the last episode, and
Mm.
that one step of just committing to this group really turned into a pilgrimage that I'm still on today. It feels like in many ways.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So for that first journey, you chose John O'Donohue. Many people would
yeah,
probably have not heard of him. I don't know if I had heard of him before you chose him. So
yeah.
tell us about the process of how you chose him and who he is and that type of thing. Tell us about John
Yeah, sure.
O'Donohue.
I had been first off. John O'Donohue is a Irish poet, author, theologian, and I had been curious about Celtic Christianity for years, and I can't say for exactly how long, but honestly, it felt a little off limits, and maybe even a little taboo, almost like it
Mhm,
was too mystical. A
mhm,
little new age maybe for someone like me. I wasn't sure if it was a healthy direction, to be honest with you. And I don't know at this time in my life when I chose John O'Donohue or started considering him, I was just starting to put words with why I felt that. I was a pastor in a somewhat traditional faith background,
mhm,
but with some gentle nudging from you and I think the Holy Spirit and prayer and discernment. I took the risk and I chose O'Donohue, not because I was sure really, but really
mhm,
because I was just stepping into curiosity. That's really
mhm,
what I was doing about something that I was very um, interested in and had been for many years,
mhm.
and that was starting to come back to my memory. So
Yeah, yeah. What I loved about when I think about your journey of discernment of choosing John O'Donohue brings up a really important point that there are areas in our faith where, you've been walking with God for decades. And there's areas of our faith where we feel fear and we immediately want to slam the door on, oh, I can't go
Yeah.
there. I can't open that door because what if it takes me, what if I become deceived by a pagan practice and I lose my faith? And
Yeah.
so the Holy Spirit could be bringing something like Celtic Christianity to you, and yet the fear of I don't want to be deceived, so I'm just going to slam the door because no one else I know is exploring this, and it just seems wrong, and it's got these question marks around it, whether it's New Age or not. So slam the door, quick, slam it. And I
Yeah.
remember walking through that same fear on my journey as I was in the spiritual direction training. And I was seeing a spiritual director during my training, and I was so afraid so often. And I would bring what I was afraid that, the new um, deepening practices that I was learning in spiritual direction, they weren't anything that my denomination had practiced. And so they scared me. And I would come to
Yeah.
her and I would like draw a line in the sand and I'd be like, if anything leads me away from Jesus, I'm out of here. And what is that? That's fear. And
Yeah.
I remember her walking me through just saying, okay, hold on. Who led you to sign up for this spiritual direction training? Who led you to that? And I
Yeah.
knew God had led me to that. And she said, and who's holding you right now? Are you holding yourself safe in safety, or is God holding you? And I
Yeah.
said, God's holding me. And she said, well, you're safe then. You're safe. And if it ever,
Yeah.
Lori, if it ever goes off course and to lead you away from Jesus, you're going to know it. But just, don't slam the door on maybe what God's leading you to. It's just unfamiliar. It's not wrong. It's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And I think that's probably some of the advice you gave me as we were talking through some of the giants and some of the people. I don't even remember the other people I was thinking about. But yeah,
yeah.
so it feels like that's probably some of the same advice you gave me as well. So,
Yeah, that was
and
such
I'm so glad you did. Yeah.
such an important piece of our life of faith, of walking with God and receiving all that he has for us. So
Yeah.
anyway, so
Yeah.
take us further here with O'Donohue, some other
Yeah. Well,
things.
it turned out to be just exactly what my soul needed. I didn't even realize it at the time. And I probably didn't even realize it until later that year. Um, but even being a pastor at that point, for about 8 years, 7 years, 8 years, my faith had become somewhat stagnant.
Mm,
In fact, when I chose John O'Donohue, I didn't know it at the time, but I was just in a deep season of spiritual apathy.
mm,
And that was unbeknownst to me, like I said at the time. But he helped me to see God in beauty. He helped me to see God in wildness, helped me see God in Celtic Christianity. And it really opened me up to a way of being in the world that was just drenched in awe.
mm,
And I was not in awe of God at this point in my life. I was
mm,
serving God by serving his people. That's all I
mm,
was really doing. And it wasn't about doctrine. This season of walking with John O'Donohue, it was really about presence, being
mm,
tuned into God, being tuned into his creation. And what's wild is that I didn't even know it. Again, like I said, this exploration, though, started a domino effect. And so
mm,
looking back now, 2.5 years later from the time I chose John O'Donohue initially, I can clearly say that that journey with John O'Donohue really has shaped much of what I'm doing today. And what's odd is even I didn't see the Celtic influences in my life even prior to this because starting in 2020, my wife and I started a new LLC. We named it Recognizing the Divine. In my
mm,
head, Recognizing the Divine, my website, it's always had a lot of Celtic design work.
mm,
And I never even realized it, that it was even influencing my decision before this.
mm.
And honestly, I don't even know that I realized it fully until now. And I'm saying it kind of
Right.
raw. Um, and so, yeah, it's just been a really cool journey to see how God's using all of this and
Mm.
even bringing it full circle to things that were happening even before this started.
Yeah, yeah. Before God was moving in a Celtic way, even though you didn't realize it. Then he leads you to John
Yeah.
O'Donohue. You open the door to Celtic faith, which when you chose him, you said, I've been curious about this for 25 years, but have not
Yeah.
had felt that it was an okay path to explore. And then now
Yeah.
continuing that in your life
Yeah.
with God. That's amazing. And
Yeah.
then during your year, tell people about what you got to do.
Well, yeah. So it's so funny. One of the things my wife actually reminded me after Journey with the Giant group started in January, my wife found this pilgrimage to Ireland hosted by Tish Oxenreider. She's another author that we followed. And we had actually bought a course of hers on how to write a rule of life. And so we were going back to that course. My wife went there for some videos to her website, and we saw that she was leading a pilgrimage to Ireland in
Mm,
July of that year. And so that's who reminded me, actually. My wife actually reminded me. She's like, Robert, you wanted to go to Ireland and Scotland since you were a teenager. That's been on your bucket list. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. It has
yeah.
been. And at that point, Rebecca and I had been married 25 years, and I had just kind of forgotten about Ireland and Scotland.
Somebody
And so
else brought it up. Somebody else brought
yes,
it up. Oh my gosh. Okay.
yeah. Yeah, and so yeah, it took us just a couple of weeks to say yes to going to Ireland, and so I spent the first 6 months of that year with John O'Donohue and learning about the Irish culture and learning about the Celtic way. And oh, funny enough, that's actually the name of the pilgrimage that we went on with Tish was called the Celtic Way.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and then got to visit in July and visit just all kinds of sites all over Scotland. So we spent 11 days there in July of
Mm.
2023, visiting place like Patrick, where Patrick went up the mountain. St. Patrick went up the mountain
Mm-hmm.
and prayed. And actually, of course, he crawled on his hands and feet. And it's a crazy journey. I didn't
Mm.
make it all the way to
Yeah.
the top. There were several of us in our group that we didn't make it all the way to the top, but many of them did.
Mm.
Um, and we visited the Knock Shrine, which again, entering into places a famous Catholic pilgrimage site. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm not Catholic, right? And so you're
Right.
thinking, well, what does this mean? And so you're a little cautious, but at the same point, um, giving yourself permission to just be awed by God, the setting
Mm.
and the things that have happened there, the history that's taken place there. It was just really beautiful. And my favorite spot was I know I'm saying some of these things wrong, but Glendalough, which is the area where Saint Kevin planted his monastery back in I believe it was either 400s or probably 700s actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, and
Mm.
I got to explore all the buildings and the remains of what was there, and the cemeteries and the educational institutions and buildings that were put in place there. It
Mhm.
was just beautiful. I mean, we don't have that kind of age and that kind of
Mm.
history in America, right? We go back
Mhm.
250, 300
Mhm.
years maybe. And
Mhm.
so to see history back 1200, um,
Mhm.
wow, even the 700s and 800s, it was just amazing, especially in the walk of faith and how
Mhm.
that plays out in our faith. And so that trip really made the spiritual very real in a way I had never experienced. And
Mm.
it anchored the mystical in the physical. And it was like Ireland and O'Donohue really both were just whispering, "You're allowed to be a mystic in training." And I use that term
Mhm.
loosely. I don't say I'm a mystic, but
Right.
yeah, to just be awed by the mystery of God, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yeah, it felt like permission to
Yeah.
explore this a little bit more and go a little deeper.
Yeah. Yeah. And, opening the door to that Celtic faith, how do you feel like it deepened your relationship with God, Jesus, your walk of faith? Do you remember any
Yeah.
transformative moments where it was like, I see something differently now?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, to be honest, I talked a little bit about spiritual apathy already. And it wasn't until June of this year of traveling with John O'Donohue and walking with him and
Mm.
journeying with him that I ran across a poem by Asherita Chuchu. She has a book called The Prayers of Rest. And that's one prayer in it is a prayer for spiritual apathy.
Mm.
And when I came to that, it was just a recognition of like the previous 2 years of my life. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
yes,
Mhm.
this is
Mhm.
me. This is where I've been. And so I don't think I would have recognized that. First off, I don't think I would have been drawn to that prayer, that
Mm.
poem,
Mm.
if I hadn't been walking with John at this point, John O'Donohue.
Mhm. Mhm.
It helped me be at peace and at presence, just being still in God's creation. like I've always been drawn to nature. I've always been drawn to sunsets and sunrises and spending time. I'm not a hiker. I'm not a fisher. I'm not a hunter, things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
man, just being outside on my back porch or my front porch when the sun's rising or sun is setting, um, just being still, being quiet, being silent, journaling, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that's always fed me. And I never really understood why, but exploring the Celtic way, exploring the Celtic faith, that's so big in who they are. The natural world is so big in their faith practices. Um, and so
Yeah.
that really helped me connect with Jesus in a new way and be very much more intentional about it.
Yeah.
Honestly, be much more intentional about being able to connect with Jesus in that way and in those
Yeah.
places. It really is like discovering thin places, right? In the Celtic um, way, they talked about this idea of thin places, these places where the veil between heaven and earth are the closest.
Mm.
That you just feel the presence of God in those places. Of course, I felt it in Ireland and in many, many places,
Right.
but then
Right.
also just feeling it now, even in places that I even create, sacred spaces that I create myself, like on my
Mm.
front porch where I have
Mm-hmm.
coffee and journal in the morning to watch the sunrise.
Mm.
So
Mm. That's
yeah, it's
amazing.
been very cool. Yeah.
Ah, it's deep. It's inspiring. Like to hear because we were in a group together, I got to hear about these pieces of Celtic faith and things that you
Yeah.
were learning from John O'Donohue, and it was strengthening me and it was building my life with God just by listening
Yeah.
to what you were learning, and it
Yeah.
still is like what you're saying right now. So anyway, well, let's transition to your second giant.
Yeah.
The year after you walked with John O'Donohue, then you transitioned to a little different role. Do you want to share about that?
Yeah. Well, as we were finishing up the group that you were leading us through, I just felt called. I just wanted to explore this with friends, friends in my local church and the difference it had made in my life, being able to walk with the giant of the faith. And John O'Donohue is not somebody that most people would think of as a giant of the faith in the traditional sense. It's not like Francis of Assisi or Mother
Hmm.
Teresa or many others, but I had been fascinated by him and had heard a lot of poems from him, like quoted and things like that. And
Hmm.
so by the end of 2023, I was just like, man, I want to explore this with other people. So I started praying. Actually, the first thing I did, I think I talked to you like, hey, I'm
Yeah.
feeling called to do this. Would you be open to me leading a group? Because I would need to use some of your material, right? And you were giving us some
Right.
material and some handouts. And of course, you got excited about the idea as well. And kind of this another proving ground, if you will, right? For
Hmm.
this message of journeying with the giant. And I don't know if you thought about it that way, but I think about it that way now to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just wanted to walk with people the way you had walked with me
Mm.
and invite them to experience faith in a new way. And so when it
Mhm.
came time to choose a new giant for me, I had a short list. And
Mhm.
my second giant was actually Thomas Merton. And my
Yeah.
short list, Thomas Merton was not on my short list. And it wasn't
Oh.
until probably 2 or 3 weeks. I don't remember who was on my short list. I had 4 or 5 that I was really considering, but Merton was not on that list. And
Mm.
it was probably 2 or 3 weeks before our first meeting with this new group that I was leading. And I was still unsure.
You better get it together, right? Yeah.
Right.
No.
But
Oh.
I do know that I kept circling back to the mystics.
Mhm.
And I'm not
Okay,
sure
stop a
why,
minute.
except that I was,
Stop a minute,
yeah,
Robert. Okay, that's the second time
yeah,
you use mystic. This is gonna be unsettling if you're
yeah,
not acquainted with the term. So, and I
yeah,
felt the same way when I first heard
yeah,
it. Now I feel differently because it wasn't what I thought it was. Anyway, so
yeah, yeah.
can you share how you see that? And did you have fear when you first heard mystic or someone
Oh,
was a
yeah.
mystic?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Well, because,
Okay.
I've heard the term mystical Christianity and things like that. And so first off, anytime I heard the word mystical, I always thought of Doctor Strange, the Marvel character
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
floating in the air and
Yeah.
casting spells and doing things. That was my definition of mystical for a
Oh,
long
yeah.
time. This cosmic detached realm, right? And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
but the deeper I leaned in, and even just looking at the definition of mystical honestly
Mm.
helped.
Mhm.
It's just really another way of saying just present spiritually, like right,
Mhm.
being present in my
Yeah.
spirituality and in my love for the Lord. It's a rootedness. It's embodied. And
hmm
honest, it creates this awe, right? The mystery of God, and leaning into the mystery of God, and being awed by that, knowing that we will never fully understand the mystery of God,
hmm
but that we
hmm
can be present in the mystery of God as well. And so
hmm
that's what I mean by mystical. And that's what mystical
Yeah.
has come to mean to me.
Yeah. Someone who is mystical, to me, is someone who lives with a constant awareness and lifestyle that I can have a living relationship with God right now. I can hear
Yeah,
his
amen.
voice. I can follow him. I can walk with him. You know, it's
Yes.
not just, um, it's not just historical knowledge or when I go to church, but I'm a mystic because I I believe in a living God and that he's communicating
Yeah.
with me right now.
Yeah, which is so weird because, again, recognizing the divine, the company my wife and I formed, she's a spirit, she's a visual artist, and so
hmm
we've tied this into her visual artist platform, and um, we're all running under that umbrella of recognizing the divine. Well, it's all about recognizing the divine in our everyday lives, right? It's about
Yeah.
recognizing the divine in washing the dishes,
Yeah.
recognizing the divine in mowing the lawn, in hanging out with friends, in studying the word, all of these things. And so it's exactly
hmm
what you described. It's being able to
hmm
recognize the divine in every area of life and be able to be present with him and commune with him ultimately,
Yeah.
even in those moments. And so I
Yeah.
was, and so that was even part of what I was forming and what I wanted to write about, even before I chose John O'Donohue and then before I chose Thomas Merton, you
Mm.
know? And
Mhm.
so just not having the correct understanding, not honestly choosing not to be curious. You talked about that earlier, slamming
Mhm.
the door shut on those areas that we've been curious about without exploring it because I thought
Mhm.
it was too much. It was a little too new agey, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah. Or and with
for me.
Merton, if you're not Catholic, to cross over into well, I guess maybe both of
Mm,
your giants were, but even
yeah.
that is a step for whether you're Catholic and you're gonna study, you know, Billy Graham, you're gonna study someone who's not Catholic or, at whatever denomination you're crossing, it's a
Yeah.
step of faith to just go like, "Okay, this is not scary. We're all a part of the body of Christ." So,
Yeah.
in that, with leading the small group, what was your experience with that? And how would you say being in a group of people walking with giants is a benefit versus walking alone?
Sure. Yeah. It was really an eye opening experience. I think I was so new to it the first year that you led the group that I did get Mm. I did grow from other people's experience, but not in the same way that I did from leading the group um, that second year. And I think part of that is because I was more familiar with the practice and I was more tuned into their journeys.
Mhm.
Both because I was trying to lead them in a way, not that I was leading them much or coaching them at all, but again, very traditional faith background at the church I was at on staff at, and these people that I invited into this group were from our church.
Mm.
And so these people who knew are people who knew me as a pastor, right? I was a pastoral role in their life. And so there was a there was a fine line I had to walk between, hey, this is not the official church teaching. Not that anything minded. The leaders knew, the pastor knew, all of these
Mhm.
things.
Mhm.
There was nothing wrong with it. But being able to see the rabbit trails they took in their role with their giant and then in their journey,
Mhm.
and their initial giant led them to somebody else who was really formational in their life later
Mm.
on that year, or has
Mhm.
even been formational in their life even since then, which, we just finished at the end of December in 2024. So
Yeah.
not that long ago. And so people that they were introduced to by their giant, by journeying with
Mm.
their giant, that they didn't really know much about until they started studying their giant specifically. And so it's
Mhm.
just been a really sweet season of even being formed, like you were saying earlier about John O'Donohue, of even being formed by other people's journey,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
how God uses that inside of me to continue to grow me in new ways and expose me to new
Mhm.
practices that I would have not thought about
Yes.
possibly.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, it
you know,
expands. Mhm.
yeah, it really does. And I think that's what drew me to Merton, honestly. So I'll go back and say that. I think
Yeah.
his I was recognizing a love for solitude and stillness and, of course, nature.
Mm.
And I don't remember how well, I'll just tell you a quick funny story. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I think how I came to see Merton, I had just started playing this maybe confrontational? No.
Controversial?
Anyway, controversial. Thank you. Oh my gosh.
Oh gosh.
I think I had just started exploring using Chat GPT for different things.
Oh.
And so I think I started like putting some things in there like, hey, these are who I'm considering, and this is what this is for, and this is what I'm going to do with it. And I
Mm.
think it maybe spit Thomas Merton out. And I'm like,
Oh.
never thought of a monk
Mm.
before.
Mm-hmm.
But his love of nature, his love of solitude, he was a photographer. And at the time,
Mm.
I'm a visual artist also. I do ceramics, although I haven't had my hands in any mud in probably 2.5 years. Um, but his devotion to silence, all of these things really spoke to me a lot in that moment. And so I hadn't yet integrated my faith and art in the way that I had hoped. And so
Mm.
knowing that he wasn't only a monk and he loved silence and solitude, and he was this person that people looked to for leadership and guidance,
Mm-hmm.
um, but he also loved art and photography and the way that influenced his faith, and also the way his faith influenced how he saw the natural world and his photography. And so it was just a really
Mm-hmm.
cool expansion. And that was so true
Yeah.
of many of the people that were in the group with me. They
Wow.
chose people they would have never chosen to, most of the people that we think of as spiritual giants, we may read a biography on them, and, it take us a month or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, and we get a
Mm-hmm.
nugget or two out of it, and we remember some things and have conversations about it. But it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't form us in a way that grows us in relation to Christ, that grows us closer to Christ.
Mm-hmm.
We don't think about looking at their life in ways that lead us closer to Christ. How did they practice their faith? How did they walk their
Mm-hmm.
faith out? And I
Mm-hmm.
think that was so great. And I didn't see that as much in the group you led. I don't know why, because it was there, it all happened. But I
Right.
don't think I was as present in those moments
Mm-hmm.
as I was when I led the group. So,
Yeah. So, as in, you're seeing personal application. You're not just reading
yeah,
about someone, oh, that's so cool. They did that. They had strong faith, but you're going, Holy Spirit, how does that, you've led me to this person.
yeah,
Is there something that you want to shape in my callings, how I'm living out my faith, my struggles through how they handled theirs?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a very powerful experience. It was great to be able to experience that alongside people, and then
Hmm.
watch people even around the room have aha moments,
Yeah.
just with other people sharing their story with their giant.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, so since you've walked with these two giants, can you share like
yeah.
one area where you see it, the influence of your giant still working with what you have going on today?
Yeah. Oh, there's so many ways, but I'm just going to tell you about one. So December 31st, 2023, last Sunday of the year, I preached a sermon called Behold. For some
Mm.
reason, I had been the preacher called on to preach the last sermon of every year for like 3 or 4 years. I don't know why. But anyway,
Mhm.
that year, I had a message all ready to go. And about 7 o'clock Sunday morning, I go to the office on Sunday mornings normally and put in a couple of hours just in prayer and finalizing, tweaking, polishing my message.
Mhm.
That morning, I just felt like God speaking to me about some things that I was pushing it back. And I went to McDonald's to get me a breakfast sandwich to eat about an hour and a half before service. And he, just as clear as day, he's like, Robert, you need to change your message and
Mhm.
talk about beholding God. And I was like,
Mm.
come on, Lord, I'm a writer who speaks. I'm not a speaker who writes. And so I don't have anything prepared on.
That's scary. Yes.
Yeah. And he had already started this journey of trust with him, right? Of building trust. And he had revealed at that point that I didn't trust him very, very much at that point, which is odd,
Mhm.
right? I'm
Mhm.
8, 9 years into a pastorate.
Right.
Um, and so anyway, I preached that sermon on New Year's Eve 2023, and that led to a 15-week sermon series that
Mm.
started about 4 weeks later, that ran all of spring in 2024, on beholding God. And I was able to introduce. I talked to the lead pastor. I was able to introduce contemplative spiritual practices to our church, which was totally
Mhm.
new. I
Mhm.
mean, spiritual practices to most churches are, I think we said it maybe in the last episode, if you pray, you read your Bible, and you go to church, that's the 3 spiritual practices.
Right, right, right.
And so I was able to introduce 8 new spiritual practices during this sermon series. And so that word, that year, my word of the year became behold. And so I spent
Wow.
2024 just learning to behold Christ in new ways.
Oh,
And then this year it's immersion. I just wouldn't be where I am spiritually, vocationally, creatively, any of those things if it were not for Donna O'Donohue and Merton. And now that sermon series has actually led to a book that I'm starting to write just a couple of months ago, turning that sermon series into a book called Beholding, the Spiritual Practice of Becoming.
yes.
And so God has just moved so crazy.
Wow. Yeah. It's like God knew that you needed though the practice, these people of his to help you step fully into the things that he has for you.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, we got okay. We
Yeah.
there's
I know
there's
there's
so
so
rich.
much, but we just
Yes,
don't have that much time.
you don't,
And there's
but
stories that you
just
don't even know about, and people that God just
yeah.
ordained divine appointments in that has led me to where I am. But I think it's all because of that initial yes to saying, yes,
Yeah,
I'm going to step into this. I'm going to be curious about this, and I'm really going to
yeah.
see what God has for me in it.
Yeah, there's some gifts in this in Celtic
Yeah.
faith that I need to form me so then I can bring them to the people I'm called to minister to.
Yeah.
And they fully got into you. Um
Yeah.
anyway,
And
so
are still getting
and
into
they're
me. I
still
mean, still
getting
being
into
formed by
you.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that because that means we're not just encapsulated within our own generation, century, and culture, because God
Hmm.
can take us back to other places and other times where there's gold from him, treasure from him that can shape us
Yeah.
now. So anyway,
Yeah.
okay, so
For
one
sure.
of my last questions. So for someone who's listening, who is hesitant to start this journey, what would you say to them?
Oh yeah. I say don't worry about picking the right giant first off. Choose someone whose life calls to you, calls to something in you. You may not agree with everything they believed, right? I didn't agree. I didn't line up theologically all the way with John O'Donohue by any means. But if they can help you see God more clearly, then they're worth walking with, right? We're given discernment.
Mhm.
We're given
Yeah.
opportunities to pray and seek God. And so this isn't a class, it's really a pilgrimage. And
Hmm.
if you give
Hmm.
yourself to it, it might just change everything in your life. It may be
Hmm.
some key moments that help you in these next stages.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's still being very formational for me. And so don't worry about choosing the exact perfect person that lines up theologically with everything you believe. Be curious and
Mhm.
trust God that the discernment's going to be there when you need it, if you need it, right?
Yes. Yeah, you're so
So be
right. You're so
curious.
right.
Be
Yeah,
curious.
be curious. Know that God's holding you.
Yeah.
Notice the divine sparks of joy or
Mm,
interest. That's
yeah.
the delight of God. So
Yeah.
anyway, well, Robert,
It really is.
thank you so much for sharing your heart and your story with us
Yeah.
today. Friends, if you'd like to connect more with Robert, be sure to visit his website, recognizingthedivine.com. We'll have the link in the show notes for you. And if this episode has stirred something in you, if your eyes are opening to a part of your discipleship to Jesus that you hadn't noticed before, we'd love for you to share this podcast with a friend, maybe someone who is much like you, been walking with Jesus for a long time, wants to grow, is hungry to grow. Just share it with them and let's keep spreading the word together about this gift that God has for us.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And if you haven't already, head over to Lori's website at lorigmelton.com. You can pre-order the book, Journey with the Giant, at any of your favorite bookstores, online or in person. But on Lori's website, you can get a free sneak peek. You can get the first 2 chapters free of charge. Just put in your information. She'll send it right over to you. It's a great way to begin discerning who your giant may be. And then in next week's episode, we're excited to start bringing in more voices, people who've walked this journey themselves and discover just how transformative that companionship can be. So we can't wait to introduce you to those stories. However, before we go, we'd like to leave you with just a brief practice to carry into your day.
Yes, we just want to leave you with a practice to open yourself to God. So wherever you are, Just take a few minutes today to be still. If you can do it right now, do it right now. Take a few breaths and ask God, bring God this question. Lord, where have you already invited me to see differently? What do I feel kind of stirring within me? What holy thread might you be weaving through the voices of those who have walked faithfully with you, that they just stir something deep within me? And then don't rush. Just kind of ponder, stay with that prayerfully and listen. And remember that every moment is an invitation to grow closer to God and each other. And we just pray that He'll open our eyes and our hearts to respond to every single one.
Amen. Thanks again for joining us, folks.